So thus far, you've heard some key points that include that responsive caregiving really matters. Something I didn't spend much time talking about, but this concept of a secure base for exploration and learning, that as we head out of our 18 months and onward, what they saw in the strange situation was that when, in the case of a child who was well attached, they were much more likely to let mom sit on the sofa and they would engage with the toys on the carpet and not require a lot of attention. They were connected, and so they were safe, and didn't need mom constantly, but they could be exploring the environment and learning new things, and maybe they did carry a toy over, I can't figure out how to get this in that thing, mom, can you show me? But the secure base for exploration and learning is something also that has really held up in the literature. And then the impact of early experiences on later relationships, and hopefully we'll look more about that here over the next hour. What are some things that we've learned more recently? Well, one of the things we've learned is that attachment is related to some very specific chemical changes in the brain of the mom and the brain of the baby, and that there's something called biosynchronization, where both heart rate and respiration, that as the baby is with the mom, especially if the baby is upset or shut down, that they become like each other. And we'll look at the autonomic nervous system here in a moment and note that actually part of how this part of the nervous system gets created properly is by these relationships. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's changing in the brain during the first 2 years of life. And I think what I hope that you all will carry away, the brain is profoundly plastic. This part of the brain can get pushed in either direction. This part of the brain is also related to the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, are strongly indicated in the trauma literature, and there really are opportunities to push back against the impact of hard things and learn some new things, and that it really can have meaningful relational and biological changes for people. So it's not a death sentence. It's never a death sentence, even to get the disorganized attachment or reactive attachment disorder, that there is consistently possibility for change in most lives. And it's good to have hope, right? Because you can feel like, now what? Now what do I do? Ha 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 ha. I've done this here before, but not all of you were with me. So if you would be willing to stand with me, if you can, comfortably. We're going to do an activity called Shake It Out. We're going to shake our arm, our hand 8 times while we count together. We'll start on the right, and then we go to the left, and then we do the left leg, and then we do the right leg. And then it's 8, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're going to do this shaking together, and then we'll talk about why it's significant. So count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. You're done. So this is it's a silly little thing, but in the trauma literature, and really I think also in attachment literature, when we send sensory information from the outside to the inside, from the left and the right, crossing over the hemispheres, it activates prefrontal cortex. We're counting together in community. It can actually activate oxytocin, which makes us feel more connected to the people that are in front of us, more connected to ourselves. It's a silly little thing, but I also know a lot of school teachers that use this if the room is kind of rattling and people are not doing very well. It's a silly little thing, and yet it's not so silly, and it really can have impact just on helping me come back towards center. And we're going to spend time talking about the window of tolerance, this sort of middle place inside of me where I can stay. I have good emotional regulation. I can ask for help if I need it. Shake it out is one of the things that can get us to come back towards that center. So how is it that caregivers, it's not quite, I'm missing a word or two, but how is it that as caregivers, that we pass along this emotional and self-regulation? Well, let's take a look at some of the emotional regulation literature in adults and the brain. What's going on? So the autonomic nervous system is two different parts of our brain that work together. The gas pedal, or the sympathetic nervous system, assists us in getting going in the morning, getting up. So cortisol is a chief stress hormone, but it does other things as well. And we make more cortisol right before we hit wake-up time. Cortisol actually helps us get out of bed and into the day. And then our cortisol levels decline naturally until it's time to go to bed. And then they slowly build again to a point of being awake. This is not the only bodily chemical substance that helps us move from one state to the other, but it's an important one in part because it's also the same system that activates us when we need to go into fight, flight, or freeze because we're in a dangerous situation. The brake pedal, or the parasympathetic system, is our rest and digest part of our body. It pushes us towards rest, including recovery after fight or flight. And we spend our days moving between the two. I have a couple of intense meetings, and then I get to have lunch, and I come back down a little bit. And I have 3 more meetings, and then I get to have coffee with a friend before I go home. This is a normal part of the nervous system. And for those of you who have kids in the room and have been around kids, you don't have to have your own kids. Do newborns know how to do this on their own? Gas pedal up, brake pedal down, right? This is one of the things that they terribly lack and can be highly frustrating if you're a parent or a babysitter or a grandparent. This is something that in the most sort of biological literature, we would say that this part of the brain is immature and it has to be entrained. And how does it get entrained? It gets entrained because my mother knows how to hold me and my heart rate begins to drop, my breathing slows down, I'm calm even though I was crying a few minutes ago. In the nervous system, there's conceptually 3 different places that you can be. Ventral vagal is at the top of the ladder. It's when we feel safe. It's when we feel social. It's when we feel like, you know what, something happens and I'm kind of frustrated, but I think I can work it out on my own. And if I can't, my dad knows about cars, so if I can't work it out, I can always call him. When we face new challenges, my spouse calls me and says, hey, I have to get to the airport. The car broke down. I can't pick up the kids. I'm going to have to lift to the airport, and I'm going to have to leave you with this mess. And pretty quickly, you can come up with a plan. Well, Grandma is on the list. She's allowed to pick up the kids at school. And you told me where the car is broken down, and I'll see that it gets moved to the garage. And go ahead, get your lift, and get off to the airport. Everything is okay. What some folks, Daniel Siegel, who is a psychiatrist, and Pat Ogden, who's a psychologist, how is this related to trauma? Well, what they noticed is that for people who've been faced trauma, they don't stay in the ventral vagal side very much at all. Now, ventral vagal refers to a portion of the vagal nerve which takes information. I don't have a good picture of it, but I think I can put a picture up after lunch. here, but I do have one on my computer. The vagal nerve gets information from all over the body, from the tips of my toes to the organs that are in my abdomen to the stuff that's happening in my lungs. It is deeply connected to the rest of the body, and it helps this ANS, this autonomic nervous system, to press on the brake when we need it, to press on the gas brake or the gas pedal when we need to go. And so the top of that ladder is to remain in ventral vagal. There's more language. So notice the capacity to relate to others is only possible when we're in the ventral vagal activation. There's another language that you could simply say when I'm in my window of tolerance, and we'll get a look at what the window of tolerance looks like in a minute. So that's one place on the ladder. Another place on the ladder is when we're in sympathetic drive, when the part of the nervous system that wakes us up and increases cortisol, increases adrenaline because we have to stand and fight or run if that's safer and better. That is also in the window of tolerance. We call it fight or flight, or we say it's hyper aroused. I'm ready. I might be shaking. I might be panting. My muscles are ready, but I might kind of be feeling like I'm sitting on the edge of things. That's the sympathetic nervous system, or fight or flight, or we also call it hyper aroused. And you'll see this again and again. When the sympathetic or dorsal, when we're in the two places in the bottom of the ladder, what we're prepared to do is either activate or shut down and hope that the predator doesn't see that I'm moving and decides not to eat me. And the goal as adults is to be able to move in and out of these three states when needed. When threatened, I can mount an appropriate response, and when the danger is past, I can return back down towards baseline. That red arrow is taking me away from sort of peak activation. And when my newborn is crying, I can hold her and comfort him until our child is calm. When in sympathetic or dorsal vagal states, those two bottom areas, the capacity to engage with others, to learn new things, to solve problems, to love my family, to relate well to my friends, those things are not really in action. We are really in survival protection mode. And it's not a bad place to be if you see the bear in the woods, right? So I think sometimes we get this idea that we should only ever stay in the ventral vagal or in the window of tolerance and never be moved outside of it. But these other two areas, sympathetic and the dorsal vagal, those parts of the brain are there for when we're at our extreme most. And the brain actually makes a response for us before we can think about it. So I either go into a fetal position, or I run like heck, or I grab my gun and face whatever's coming after me. All of this is part of the nervous system, and all of it is needed. I won't stay with trauma very long because that's not what we're here to talk about today. But when we've been traumatized, it's harder for us to get back into that ventral vagal window, and it's easier for us when new challenges come to get bumped either into the fight or flight or to the shutdown. To be useful in our parental lives, we need to reduce cues of danger and move towards safety and relational engagement, taking care of this little life that's been given to me. We create safety, and we're going to spend more time this afternoon really kind of trying to unpack safety and danger. We create safety by listening to our nervous system and what state we're in and what state my child is in. So I needed to reach out to someone because I was in an emotional crisis. Actually, my therapist. And she got on the phone long enough to say, Is it possible for you to wait 1 hour? I will come back, but I have something I need to do. Yep, absolutely, I could do that. And when she came back on an hour later, she said, if I had talked to you then, I would have yelled at you too, because her kids were not going to bed. And it's a pretty good, right? It's a pretty big deal every night to get everybody in bed, right? This is a challenge. And I loved her self-awareness, but it's also true that if I'm really revved up and my kid is revved up, is my kid going to calm down? We tend to track, and this is the mystery of especially infancy, we tend to track with where our caregiver is. I sort of like this definition. Benevolence is the active, ongoing, intentional use of ventral vagal energy in service of life as well as in service of healing. The ANS in the infant is immature. Have you not asked these questions? Could they cry forever? Or could they shut down forever? This is where the caretaker gets to enter, stage left to help children, babies, manage their emotional, physiological regulation. Those words are really small, but I like this graph because it shows the difference. That window of tolerance is the middle part. The top is hyperarousal, the bottom is hypoarousal, and hyperarousal is the dorsal vagal. I get confused with all the terms, even me. I usually just use these three terms: window of tolerance, hypoarousal, hyperarousal. And here's another rendering of the three areas. So in hypoarousal, I tend to have flat affect. I'm sleepy, I'm foggy, I'm shut down. I don't really want to feel anything. I'm not very good at problem solving. I'm not very good at asking for help either. Limited body awareness, numbness, confusion, and I feel faint. Window of tolerance, calm, alert, able to concentrate, able to focus, able either to problem solve or to ask for help to problem solve. Fairly emotionally present, able to speak what I'm feeling, able to make good decisions or ask someone to help me make a decision if I feel like I don't know what to do. And then the hyperarousal is the other side. I feel overwhelmed, I'm anxious, I'm agitated, I feel panic, I'm shaking, I'm sweating, I feel impulsive, my breathing speeds up, my heart rate increases, I might be very angry, I can't sit still. I'm also in a space where I can't make very many good decisions, and I struggle to ask for help. I struggle actually to see that I need help. Of course, adults that practice and know about these things, we can get good at realizing some of what pushes us out of our window of tolerance, what brings me back, what keeps me there when I need to be there. And that is our next activity, is to let you go through and answer these 7 questions. Think about, when I'm very stressed, what are some adjectives from the list that you experience? Do you move towards, so some people, most of the time when they're really challenged, they move consistently to shut down or maxed out, hypoarousal, hyperarousal. But some of us are flip-floppers, and I'm a flip-flopper. My anxiety goes up and I'm agitated, and then eventually the bottom falls out, and then I go to shut down for a while. And if I haven't found a way to get back into my window of tolerance, I may shift again into that hyperarousal and then fall into hypoarousal and not really get to the window of tolerance by myself. Think your way through these questions and write, these are not real super difficult things. I'm going to give you a few minutes to look at these and answer them for yourselves. And then I'm going to have you share a little bit with somebody near you, and then we'll bring it back together and talk about the window of tolerance. All right, I'm turning it over for you for a couple of minutes, and I'll remind you in a little bit to reach out to somebody nearby you to have a conversation.
Could you back up 2 slides real quick?
Yes,
Something I was writing down, but I didn't.
I'm sorry.
One more, right there.
Okay. Moving too fast. Share on this. Let's just answer from our seats. I'll give you a couple more minutes. Looks like some folks are still working. I love it. Do you move towards hyperarousal? Do you move towards hypoarousal? Oh man, I think we're like split down the middle. And do you flip-flop? Flip-flops me. Okay, interesting. It's a pretty good bell-shaped curve of the possibilities. And just because you mostly do hyperarousal doesn't mean that you won't land in hypoarousal sometimes. What some of the people who've studied the window of tolerance in animals, they talk about the hypoarousal, that literally it's like you're preparing for death. You're shutting down, you're waiting for the talons of the eagle. And we actually upregulate opioids, which can potentially reduce the pain that we might feel if the eagle is going to eat me. And those effects are there in human beings as well. People have looked at blood levels, and so it's just sort of fascinating to me. I know, yeah, all mammals seem to be wired this way, which is fascinating. When you're stressed, how does your body feel? Popcorn answers.
Tight, can't relax.
Tight, can't relax. Like you're vibrating. I love that one.
Makes my whole body ache.
Yes, my whole body aches. Foggy. Hard to think.
Trouble breathing.
Trouble breathing. That's a good one. And a very distressing one. Some people flip from that into panic attacks because it feels so bad that they feel like they're going to die. A couple more.
Jittery.
Jittery, like you can't sit still.
I can note that my normally slow heart rate is up a bit.
Yes, you can feel it. Absolutely. Also not a very good thing it's not a nice thing to feel, is it? If you are maxed out and hyperaroused, what helps you calm down? What helps you get back towards center?
Reminding myself of reality.
Reminding yourself of reality? Yes. Say that again. Physical activity, absolutely.
Voice it.
Voice it, so actually say what's, yes. Or scream, hey, whatever works.
Talk to my wife about it because she knows where it's at anyway.
There you go. Talk to my wife about it. She knows where it really, what'd you say? Because she knows where it is really anyway. Yep. I hear some other husbands saying the same thing.
Go out to nature.
Go out into nature. Absolutely. Barefooted, yes.
Box breathing.
Box breathing, explain.
Well, it's like you breathe in for 4 counts and then hold for 4 counts and then breathe out for 4 and hold for 4.
Yes.
So it forces you to slow down.
That's right. And it actually, it activates our brake pedal. So box breathing was suggested. You breathe in on a count of 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out on 4, you hold for 4. And it actually slows. There's the alternative is, or one of the alternatives is breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out on 8. That one also, and that's what I use when my anxiety is high. And usually within 2 to 3 minutes, I begin to feel relief, which is sort of, how is that possible without a drug? Like, it really does actually work, or it does for some people. It may not work for everybody, but it's definitely worth, if being in that hyper aroused place is true for you, box breathing may be very helpful in helping you come back down. What do you need to hear, either from yourself or others, in order to return to your window of tolerance?
My husband's logical brain calming me down and saying it's not the end of the world, or we know what it feels like.
So your husband calmly talking you down, reminding you of the real, that it might feel like a catastrophe, but it isn't fully a catastrophe.
God is with me. I'm not alone.
Yes, God is with me. I'm not alone.
I ask myself if I'm picking up the stone others are casting to carry. That's not mine to carry.
Are you picking up the stone that other people are casting that isn't mine to carry? That's well said.
I am God's son.
I am God's son. Who do I belong to? Absolutely. That gives me goosebumps. That's a powerful one.
I think the importance of just acknowledging what you're feeling and not necessarily doing anything with it.
Correct.
Just say, I acknowledge I am feeling,
Yes.
that's what you have to do.
Yes. Trying to make decisions in the two ends is really problematic, right? When I'm at my worst, it is not the best time for me to decide whether or not to buy a house or anything else.
I think just saying this is not permanent.
Yes.
Always feel this way.
Yes. This is not permanent. Yes.
The mistake I made doesn't really define who I am.
The mistake I made does not truly define who I am. Yes, absolutely. Okay, this is a complete random, but I totally forgot to say this at the beginning. Okay, I don't normally dress like I'm going to the gym when I give a talk. I managed not to bring my dress pants with me. I could go to Walmart and try to find a pair, or I could just show up. I did use the laundry room, thank you. So yeah, I don't usually quite look like this when I'm presenting, but you know, I actually think I have to have a checklist because the last 2 times I've traveled, the other thing I left at home was my computer power cord, and thankfully, Best Buy on my way here, I managed to figure it out actually in O'Hare and called and bought one and picked it up on the way. Stress. This is the impact of stress.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, obviously, the hyperarousal, the adjectives here are sort of the negative, unhealthy side of these, and that's
Yes.
appropriate for this context. But can you help me understand, like, my understanding would have been that, that there are healthy ways to respond to cortisol, adrenaline, and, you know, the sort of fight or flight response. There are ways that can actually sharpen us and make us more alert and more able to concentrate and more focused
For a time.
to make good decisions.
Yeah.
Whereas these are sort of the unhealthy responses
Right.
to those, or maybe the untrained responses, or the
Yep.
natural responses.
Yeah.
So can you help me understand what
Sure. I mean,
the categories you're using?
right. The truth is that when you're in hyperarousal, at least at the beginning, your vision changes. You are much more focused on things that are coming straight at you, as opposed to like the periphery actually gets quite a bit smaller in what your eyes are coding. You get extra with the heart rate increase. You're pushing extra oxygenated blood to the muscles that you might need to respond. You're also freeing up something called ATP, which provides additional energy to your muscles. So if you have to run like heck or fight like heck, you've got the supports. I think the reason I write it this way is because most of the time I'm talking to trauma survivors, and it's only good for a little while, and then we slide. You can't maintain that level, I think, without sliding into something that's not very positive or doable. Yeah. Sometimes I meet, especially when people have been harmed, people will say, I don't understand why I didn't fight. Why didn't I fight harder? Somehow it's my fault. The truth of the matter is that when we face that kind of a crisis, our brain makes the decision. If you go into shutdown, your brain made that decision for you. You don't yet, that thought, that action happens before conscious thought can shape the happening, if that makes any sense. So once amygdala is engaged, it's going to do something, and you don't get to speak into it until after the fact, so to speak. But yes, in hyperarousal, you may have the capacity, especially men, to literally pick the car up off of somebody where a jack has failed in an automobile shop, and you may get that person out because of fight flight. But it's also true that in either of the extremes very long, we're in trouble. We can't really express what we need. We can't really ask for help. We can't make many clear decisions. So yes, these things were God-given and intended to be there, but when you stay out in the extremes for very long, you get into trouble pretty quickly. Just a good question. Thank you. Yes.
Something I thought about as we were going through the question, or as I was perusing the questions, is, maybe it's a question, statement, combo here. Is it possible that we become so familiar with either hypo or hyper that we actually live there and don't know it? And the people around us experience it, and they say, well, you're angry about this, or you're upset, or, no, I'm not.
Yeah,
Because we're so familiar with our own reaction.
that's brilliant. Yeah. That's a great question and comment. Yes, that is true. And if we stay out there, like literally high levels of cortisol can begin to kill brain cells. This is not a good thing, right? And so if you end up in the extremes long enough, if you finally realize that that's where you are, you can begin to learn. You can learn new techniques to get me back in my window of tolerance, but of course you have to want to do it. Yeah, that's a great comment. Thank you.
Is the vision thing for both sides?
And that's a good question. I think it only works if you're on the hyper aroused side. I think when you go into shutdown, you really do everything is it's like you've hit all the breakers and everything is off. You're just, yeah.
I was working with a hypo person, and he just kind of shut down and expected other people to rescue him.
Right. And that's tagging on with what Joanne just said. Yeah, I mean, you can become accustomed to moving in one of these directions, and if we're a baby, parents try to do the right thing. If we're an adult, it's really hard. It's hard to actually even be around someone like that because, but when they are in complete shutdown, they aren't thinking logically, right? So like, how do you find that conversation that you can have with somebody when they're in the window of tolerance long enough to hear and not just hear criticism? Yeah. All right, on we go. Back to babies, the window of tolerance, arousal, calming, and co-regulating. We've said this already. Babies are not born with mature emotional regulation. They are born with the ability to ask us what they need. They don't really have the power to re-enter their window of tolerance. We have learned how to re-enter or stay in our own windows of tolerance as adults so that we can be there for the child. And this is called, in the literature, in the attachment literature, we talk about attunement, actively noticing that the infant needs assistance. And attunement also, it also is something that happens for us in good partnerships like a marriage. And there's evidence now that this is even true in good, deep therapeutic relationships, that we have the capacity in both directions, whether it's the therapist or the client, whether it's the husband or the wife, that we notice when someone else isn't doing very well. And we work to help that person get back to a more centered place. For those of you who are moms and dads, when do infants show the capacity to begin to self-soothe? Do they thumb suck from birth? It depends on the baby. I know that kids can suck their thumb even in the womb. What other things do infants do to self-soothe? Or is it that they really are pretty dependent on mom and dad at the very beginning anyway, in the first 6 to 9 months? I don't know. I don't have babies, so that was a question that I had for you guys. Mm-hmm.
I think we could tell ourselves that they're self-soothing, but I don't think that they're actually feeling seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're highly dependent upon the adult to attune and help them co-regulate, help them come down to a sense of calmness again. More. Oh, was there a question?
There's sometimes giving them a pacifier or something.
Right.
There is studying nerve things over the years. We have a lot of nerve endings in the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
And this thumb sucking or something like that puts pressure on the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
And that calms them.
Okay.
It makes them, their nerve stimulates the nerve system so they can calm down.
Okay. So with thumb sucking, there are a lot of nerve endings in the tongue, and that pressure that happens when you put your thumb in your mouth and keep it there helps. Most likely, it activates the same system. How do we help regulation and develop? We make eye contact. We're talking or singing to our infants. We rock or wrapping them in a blanket, holding the baby. These are not only, they don't only calm the baby, but they also help them learn to calm themselves over time. Sorry, that's sort of a restatement of the last slide. So one of the, her name is a little bit cut off. Up at the top it says Dr. Ruth Feldman, biosynchronization. So I think I knew about this before, but for whatever reason, writing this particular talk, this all kind of blew my mind, if I'm honest. This reality that the vagal, that brake pedal is not fully mature at birth, and actually it needs to be fully myelinated in order for the vagal nerve, when it gets stimulated, to help us come back towards center. And we'll talk about what myelination is. It's a kind of insulation that, a natural insulation that wraps around individual nerves. And there's a lot of myelination happening in that first year. There is also heart rate. As you can see, there's a heart up there. That heart rate can match. That's bad. I can't read my own. This kind of synchrony also exists between well-partnered spouses and therapists and clients. Coming close, staying connected matters to our brains. Paying attention to our emotions and how we feel in the moment in our significant relationships really matters a lot. And I would say I was not raised up in a home where that was believed. Strong emotions, especially strong negative emotions, were pushed back against. And that picture at the bottom is like the side of the brain on one side, and then it's a picture looking at activation patterns from parent and child. You can show that there's synchronization also of what brain waves the brain is making when a parent is holding and calming a child. So the synchronization is across multiple physiological systems. I personally, maybe professionally, I suppose I knew this, but it's still really fascinating, and we are fearfully and wonderfully made. How did God design a system that allows for all of this to happen? It's really quite beautiful. Just doing face-to-face with your child by the time they're 3 months old, their heart rate is moving towards yours if they are upset. Just facial gazing. That's amazing to me. It's really quite striking. And the vagal brake can be exercised and strengthened with skin-to-skin contact, with social engagement like face-to-face and breastfeeding. And also, one of the researchers, his stuff is really good, but it's very complicated, and so I didn't bring much of Alan Shore's work into this. But he says explicitly that joy in an infant is essential because it's part of what allows a baby and a mother, a baby and a father who's bumping, and the baby's laughing, and you're looking at them, and they're looking at you, and you're holding them. This is joy within the nervous system, within the body, within emotions, and it shapes your child, and it shapes you too. That is amazing. How did that come to be? Right? Like, that's the good news. We can think about hard things and how it impacts us, but the fact that our nervous system and that we can be so sensitive to each other, I find that amazing and sort of, it's exciting to think about. And maybe, I don't know, maybe if I were a parent, I might feel like it's almost too much. How is it possible that I have this much impact? But if every parent in America knew that this was actually happening, would it change how they take care of their kids? It might. I'm sorry, the top of these slides is slightly torn off. Attunement and attachment is right-brained. It's all about shared regulation, logic, words, the ability to analyze things, the ability to organize things, the ability to think of things in sequence. That stuff is not yet online in the first 2 years of life. And it really is about emotion and sensation, for the adult, about intuition. What do I think is happening? I wonder what he's really thinking about right now. Reading the nonverbals and being relational, feeling based in the self. The self is based, the development of self is based within the other self. Because of the one, the other can become. I find that. I could think about that a long time. So these are not surprising, right? Early in life, we're bipolar. Who takes us from crying to cooing? It's our parents or our caregivers. What does cooing represent about a child's internal state? That was a prompt for me to talk about that literature that Alan Shore has demonstrated, that the feeling of bliss, the feeling of joy, shared laughing between a caregiver and infant takes us from crying to cooing and creates within us, he would argue that within the brain it creates within us the capacity to have joy ourselves and to ultimately have joy to be the parent that can share that with their own child. And we talked a little bit about this, the mother's milk and the fact that the baby can recognize it. Parents' faces, both mother and father, I think, I didn't write the absolute statistics, but I think it's like at 3 to 4 months, if you have the baby in, and I think they do both. I think they do the mom and the baby together in an imager, like in fMRI. You can show that the same part of the brain is lighting up for both baby and parent or caregiver. Something I didn't add here, and something you might know about, is this notion of mirror neurons. So there are neurons spread throughout in different parts of the brain. Mirror neurons when if I'm watching at 2 my mother stir sugar into her tea, the part of the brain that is responsible for movement is also lighting up. Just where it lights up in mom, it's lighting up in the child. If I'm very sad, the emotional responses that I'm having as a parent, the child begins within 2 to 3 years, they start to light up in the same areas. So we're really, really watching. The infant is watching and learning and soaking in what the parent is offering to them. I find that amazing. Early development of the self is deeply tied to attachment, attunement, I'd say co-regulation, and the right brain. So what is happening in the brain, and how does it relate to attachment? Well, one of the things we've touched on briefly is oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone or a peptide, I think is the right way to say it, is a peptide that's made in the hypothalamus, which is kind of deep in the lower part of our brains. I didn't put that on the slide. When our infant arrives, both mother and dad have similar levels of oxytocin that they're making. And oxytocin elicits in us feeling close and wanting to feel close. And in all mammals, all the studies that have ever been done, if you block oxytocin expression at birth, it radically changes the maternal behaviors of the mother rat, the mother rabbit, etc. Oxytocin is this really important thing that helps to shape this back and forth relationship that's happening. And I love that it's true even for the parents, even if the baby is fostered or adopted. So as adults, we're making oxytocin and drawing our child in. It's released when there is touch, synchronously with another. 30 seconds is sufficient to increase oxy release. Oxytocin rise when someone is falling in love with someone else. It's rising for both people. And there was a trauma detail that I was going to add. Yes, so there are a number of different activities that I do sometimes, teach sometimes, where you're taking time to think about, and we'll do a little bit of that this afternoon. You're taking time to think about, who are the special people in my life? Who's the person that I know has always got my back? Taking time thinking about that person increases oxytocin in me, and so not only it increases my sense of connection to that person. Fearfully and wonderfully made. And it helps the synchronization of body, brain, and emotion between the caregivers and the child. Shifting now to talking a little bit about what's actually happening in the brain early in development. This is a neuron. They're neurons. When we're born, we have 200 billion neurons in our brain. The neuron is the information highway of the brain. Neurons link together and can pass messages from this to that, to this to that. Neurons are where we hold memories, where they form and are held and sometimes are forgotten. We make double the amount of neurons that we need when we're born. And by the time we're an adult, we have 100 billion neurons instead of 200 billion. So there is a dramatic amount of changes that are happening in the nervous system in these early days. Everything a baby experiences, including attachment, forges neural connections. In order for me to remember that Joanne's last name is Nisley, somewhere in my brain, that memory is held, probably by a couple different neurons, some that remind me that she's with Hope Ministries, that I met her a number of years ago in Florida, that I got to visit with when I was here last time. We went out to eat. They're hosting me. all of that stuff is being held somewhere between neurons. Neurons can get bigger and their connections can get stronger, and they can also shrink and get smaller, and to some degree, that's probably part of how forgetting happens. That connections between neurons that were very strong have gotten weaker and weaker, and now it becomes more and more difficult to remember whatever that memory was. There's a lot we don't know yet, but these are some of the things we do know, and I find the nervous system amazing. We are about 1/3 the size of an adult brain when we're born, and in the first 3 months, it more than doubles its volume. That's a boatload. And so the 200 billion neurons, what's happening that the brain doubles? It's the synapses. It's neurons talking to each other. It's neurons sending a long process to another part of the brain to, oh, I need amygdala here with this other thing in prefrontal cortex. It's amazing. During early infancy, okay, sorry, that was supposed to be on another slide. Critical developmental neuronal tasks. So while we're in utero and after we're born, those neurons that I talked about, they have to form connections. If they don't form connections, that individual neuron might die, and the vagal brake early on, it's in this state of beginning to make connections and then to begin to be not myelinated to be retained. Synapse elimination, so what happens if we have 200 billion and then we move down to 1 billion? Well, one of the ways is that neurons pull apart those connections. Some connections are made that are not going to be retained, and those connections break apart, and some of those neurons, it's called apoptosis, some of those neurons die. And then synapse formation on this graph shows that early on in life, most of the synapses that are being made have to do with vision, hearing, and I think we would add in there taste and basic touch. And as you get out into the second year now, the synapses that are happening are mostly about language. And as you push out into 5 and 6 and 10 and 12 years old, the brain, that part of the brain that's changing most has to do with the cortex, the cortex up here. So there's a lot of change happening, and that change actually shifts to different parts of the brain that are brought online as we grow up. When I'm 1 day old, I do not need to know that 2 + 2 is 4. But I do recognize the smell of my mom, and I cry when she seems too far away from me. And so you get this really beautiful architecture being changed across time as the experiences of the child's changed. Can these things be shifted or shut down? So there's a really classic series of experiments. It sounds, I'm sorry, a little horrible if you're a cat person. I'm sorry. Neuroscientists, we do the stupidest, weirdest, coolest things. So they took kittens and they sewed, I think they left one eye open and they sewed one eye shut. So this eye is getting feedback all the time, but this eye is getting none. And we already know in development, that there are some visual neurons that get most excited when you look at the outward boundary of a door or a building or a riser. Outward bounds, outward connections, that's really important to know, right? If we don't see that, we don't know how to get through a doorway. If we don't see that, we don't know where our car starts and stops in the adult brain. When you sew an eye shut on a kitten, those neurons for that side of the eye do not show that sensitivity to outward bounds. But the part of the eye that's still working, the places it travels, those neurons show that responsivity. Sometimes, if you don't get the information at the right time, those neurons never change. So people talk about critical periods, critical developmental periods. Sometimes neurons, if the information is blocked, they will never gain that capacity to know the difference between outer boundaries of things. Amazing. I don't like brain development at all. Myelin, insulating the brain. Excuse me. Guys, I never talk this much. For years. Myelination, insulating the brain. So if you look at the holes are in the center, and you can see there's kind of brownish gray around the out, and the inner looks white. Myelin is what that white is made up of. It's passing fibers from one neuron to another, and they have this fatty outer surface that helps insulate neurons, which helps neurons know I'm firing, but that one over there is not firing because I am. Myelination stretches out into adulthood, but most of it happens by year 1. 40% of the weight of the brain is that outer insulation that's protecting those neurons. Fatty insulation wraps around the axon. It stops leakage of electrical signals, right? If we have a short in our electrical system at home, you can cause a fire because things that were not supposed to touch each other and contain this movement of electrical energy, when they do, poof, you have a fire. The same way it's true in the brain. These neurons need this insulation so the right messages get to the right place and not anywhere else. Pediatricians recommend high-fat diets in 0 to 2 because it specifically helps build this insulation in the brain. Spinal cord actually begins to myelinate at 5 months in utero, and then you get this ongoing of the rest of the brain across time. Some of you may have heard before that a part of our brain does not fully mature until we're 26 or 27. That's prefrontal cortex. That's everything here in front of, behind, right behind your hand if you cover your forehead. It's really important for emotional regulation, actually, and it's something that if we've been traumatized as children, we may actually have damage. You can actually lose cell bodies, and you can lose connections between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. And so if there's severe trauma in those early days, there sometimes are structural changes that are hard for the brain to recover from. Neurons are tightly packed, and this is in multiple sclerosis. Part of what's happening is those fatty insulating parts are breaking down, and so now my neurons are no longer my sensory neuron fires, and it thinks that it's about a muscle, and a muscle axon fires, but it ends up being sensory. It adds noise to the system. That's profoundly problematic. And how is it that we pass on emotional and self-regulation? All right, we're going to flip-flop back to adults for 13 minutes. Yeah, go ahead. You want to? Yes, go right ahead. I knew that was coming. Please.
Well, but it feels like I'm interrupting.
You're fine.
But
I noticed you, so then,
you noticed me, okay? You noticed what I have. And most of you are probably hungry, right? Or some form of that. So is it okay if we interrupt to
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
put the offering and to eat?
Absolutely.
Okay. Wayne, I'll let you also help with this. Board member, right? So, yeah, well, thank you very much, Joy. This is a blessing to sit together and learn about these things, stretch our brains.
Mine
Is there still some plasticity left?
There is.
There is?
Yes.
dementia.
Very helpful.
It's not suggesting that you're demented.
Well, see, I have this card, because I might forget some.
Like my dress